Good evening. Welcome to Living Waters, falling deeper in love with God's Word. I'm one of your hosts, Lauren Cruz. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. I am Stephanie Pavlantos. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. We're back. We're a little tired. We're glad it's Friday. We're moving a little slow. It's been a rough week. Week here, especially if you're watching outside of America. It's been a rough week in America this week.
It has. That shook me up. And I was like, when that happened, because it happened Wednesday, right? So yeah. I was with Charlie Kirk.
Yesterday. Wednesday?
No.
Yeah, it was Wednesday.
It was Wednesday because yesterday was the 9/11 thing. Yes. And that kind of got overshadowed by Charlie Kirk's murder, assassination. Yeah. So that was rough. I know when I heard it, I was done for the day. I didn't do another thing but follow the news, follow everything that was going on. So
yeah, I turned the news on. I was on social media and I saw it and I was like, oh my goodness, and ran to the news, watched it for a little bit, but I actually had to go take photographs at a football game. So I had to leave. So that was, a little bit, but by the time I got home, I was able to get caught up on everything. And it was just rough.
It was sad. Yeah. There was sadness, like when, like Princess Di, I felt sad. I just felt like how terrible. And, JFK Jr. There were things like people like that. And then when you got the shootings, the school, and
it's horrible.
Yeah. You feel sad and you really do. It's just, there's just so much going on in the world and there's so much hate.
Yeah.
And then when you see, though, I think a guy who's only sharing the gospel and really trying to prove, points about the ideas out there that are just incorrectly understood and such, and just trying to make things like really tell the truth. And then you see him get just, gunned down in front of his whole family.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
it's sad. It's sad.
So, it's, Anyway, despite what other people, there's people who hated him, people who loved him, and people, and I saw something interesting that we were talking about a lot before we hit live, but, I've seen people online that were like, I've never been to church, but I'm going this week.
Good.
Or I've been a Democrat all my life, but now I'm changing. I'm leaving that party, because it's like, there's hate. There's so much hate.
Yeah, so. I know we need to study, but we've been dealing with different challenges in our community. We've had teachers being fired. We've had teachers suspended this week because of social media posts. And I told my husband this morning, I said, they shouldn't have said that. I agree. They shouldn't have said what they said. But even the other side is like calling for their job and, ruin their lives and they need to be terminated. And I agree they shouldn't have said it, but they're fighting against the same freedoms that person used. And, just because that person doesn't have the same viewpoint, I'm going to shut that freedom down. But you're shutting down your freedoms as well. So.
Yeah, and we need to keep, obviously, our country in prayer.
Yeah.
And even the family of the shooter, because his father turned him in. His father was a retired, cop, basically. He was retired. He worked for the sheriff's department.
Right.
So for a man to have to turn in his son for murder, for an assassination, and they're going after the death penalty with him.
Yeah.
And so now, yes, you have a very Christian family, perfect, picture perfect family that has lost their father, lost their husband, but you have this family over here that has also willingly turned in their son for this assassination, and now they will be dealing with a loss. His brothers.
Have a loss.
Yeah. So it is sad all the way around because
it is.
families have been affected, not
It
just
is.
one.
Yeah.
So you can't control what your kids do sometimes, and you look at them and you're just like, why in the world? But something like that, you're like, why? What did I do wrong?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So
I ask that for a lot less sometimes.
yeah, I
I
understand.
have 3 adult children, and sometimes I wonder, where did I fail? Sometimes I'm happy. I'm very proud.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we are on chapter 8. I think we have 2 chapters left after this. So
Yeah, we just have 2 more weeks, and then we have to figure out
Stephanie,
what
you
we're
and I
doing.
need to make a decision on what we're going to do next, so we can let people know and they have a chance to buy the book. But we are continuing through On Purpose by Julie Zine Coleman, and today we're going to be looking at 1 Timothy 2, 8 through 15. And I have to say, this is probably one of the toughest ones yet that she's addressed. Like, to me, the other ones, I'm like, okay, that's kind of easy to argue, but this one is a tough one.
Yeah, she did a good job, I thought.
Yeah, I did too. I like her approach. She talks a lot about Gnosticism. We'll define that, and we'll talk about that in a second. But are you okay if I just read the passage real quick so we know?
Sure, go right ahead.
All right. So, therefore, I want men in every place to pray, lifting up holy hands without anger or dispute. Likewise, I want women to endure themselves with proper clothing, modestly and discreetly, not with braided hair or gold pearls or expensive apparel, but rather by means of good works, as is proper for women making a claim to godliness. A woman must quietly receive instruction with entire submissiveness. But I do allow a woman to teach or to exercise authority over. Oh, but I do not allow.
Yeah, I was like, you forgot the key
I
word
wish.
there.
Yeah, wouldn't that be easy? I do not allow a woman to teach or exercise authority over a man, but to remain quiet. For it was Adam who was first created, and then Eve. And it was not Adam who was deceived, but the woman who deceived and became a wrongdoer. But women will be preserved through childbirth if they continue in faith, love, and sanctity with moderation. And that's 1 Timothy 2, 8 through 15. So
yeah, and there's some hard verses there within that passage to really decipher and to make sense out of. And so when you have things like that, you really have to do your due diligence in context. We talk about context all the time. We talk about the language, certain language that's used, and that's going to be what we're going to talk about tonight a bit more, I think.
Yeah.
Because go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, it's just there's a lot to understand, and if you take it out of context, then you're doing more harm than good. Then you're trying to say that it's saying something that it's not saying.
Very much so. I will say, she mentioned how she actually studied this verse in seminary, and I think she had to write a paper on it, and so weeks and weeks.
The last part, the very last verse you read about the women will be preserved through childbirth. So
right. So she spent a lot of time debating other people and discussing, and she was funny. She said, when I finally turned it in, I said I should have had a note that said, this time I believe this, but ask me in a few days and I could believe something else. So,
right. Today, I'm turning this in and saying this is what I think, but tomorrow it could be
something else.
And she opens up the chapter by talking about when their pastor went on a sabbatical, and the elders decided to use the people in the lay people who were gifted in teaching. So they and the pastor, before he left on his sabbaticals, I want to say sabbaticals like Shabbat, but sabbatical, said, hey, make sure you talk to the author here, who is Julie Coleman. So, and so she said she was thrilled that they actually asked her to take part in teaching. And she said one of the elders come by the platform when she's getting ready and doing a sound check for that Sunday morning. And she basically said, you might want to step back a few paces in case I get struck by lightning.
That's right.
So it was just a kind of tongue in cheek. She was making light of it, but they she did, and she still does. She still
Mm-hmm.
does teach to this day.
Does.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
since he's been gone. So
That's right. That's right. Okay. Well, she jumps in and she does talk about, first, Second Timothy 2 does have its challenges, just like the other one. These are the questions that Corinthians chapter 12 raise. Paul is telling women to receive instruction quietly and to remain quietly, but then he has no problem with women prophesying or praying aloud in the body. Is this a conflict? Is First Timothy a conflict? Paul's instructing all women to be is Paul instructing them to be perpetual students? But then he warns and says, you're always learning and you're never able to come to the knowledge of truth. So how is that reconciled?
right.
There's a controversy revolving around the verb in athentio, and I know Stephanie's got a little extra on that, but athentio, which was translated as usurping authority, that's how it was translated. But the problem is this verb only occurs one time in the entire New Testament. In fact, even in secular writings, it was only found 2 other times. How can we be sure we've accurately understood it? And then apart from these verses, there's no instruction in the New Testament that specifically limits women from teaching and preaching. And since a limitation like that would impact half the believers, why didn't Paul bring it up in any of his other letters?
Right. So I have a story to tell. So I started on TikTok, my daughter and my husband, and then like at different times. And then a friend said, hey, Stephanie, you should start putting some short reels on, or post on TikTok and do like some really just take a couple verses and teach on them and let it go. So kind of like a real abbreviated Bible study that's just more than 4 to 6 minutes. So anyway, I thought I would do. I started that. I just put 2 up this week, and the very next day after the second one was up, I was talking about Hebrews 8 and 9, and so I see that there's a stitch. I get a notification that someone did a stitch with my video. And if you don't know that terminology, it's basically in TikTok land, you can pull up the person's video, stop it, and then speak yourself. So what were you doing?
No, it's connected. It's connected, and
so I can talk.
Stitching it together.
Yeah, they're stitching 2 videos together. So she did that. So then I'm like, oh, okay, let me go see what she said. So basically she starts calling me out. She was from a group of people I won't mention on here, but they have a bad reputation on TikTok for being a bit cultish, for more than one reason. Okay. Not just because of what she said to me, but for other reasons. So she calls me out and she tells me that I failed to write women's teaching on my video so that the men would know it was for women and they would scroll on by. And heaven forbid a man wouldn't hear me saying something about the Bible. And I just find that hard to understand. But so she used this verse. And she said, you are usurping authority by doing this, and you are under God's judgment. And I wanted to warn you in love so you would not be judged harshly by the Lord. Now, I'm on my own little phone here talking in my own house with my husband's knowledge, if you want to hear that. He was here and he knew. And whose authority actually am I usurping by making a 4-minute video on the book of Hebrews,
right?
On the
and
chapter.
If a man doesn't want to hear you teaching, he can scroll on.
Yeah, you do this. You just scroll on.
Right.
And but whose authority was I usurping? I am in my own house on my own phone. I'm not. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's not even like I'm in a church and I'm making this video.
Right.
So, anyway, and my pastor said, no, don't make a video. So I think we have to put things in perspective. Word usurping authority is important.
Do you want to pull that word up? Isn't that the graphic that you have? Yeah,
So
let's
right
go ahead and at
here,
least talk about that word.
yeah. So if hopefully you can see it, you might need to make it larger.
Mm-hmm.
But so I'm gonna have to. Oh, there you go. Thank you. That's better. So when I look at this, so if I scroll down here, you can see that we're actually talking about the same word, and she is talking about 1 Timothy 2:12.
Mm-hmm.
So here's what the that word that stands for usurping authority between the years of 200 BC to 200 AD. So for 400 years, this is how they used that Greek word.
Mm-hmm.
Doer of a massacre, author
Mm-hmm.
of crimes,
Mm-hmm.
perpetrators of sacrilege,
Mm-hmm.
supporter of violent actions, murder of oneself, sole power, perpetrator of slaughter, murderer, slayer of oneself, authority, perpetrator of evil, and one who murders by his own hand.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's pretty,
That's pretty strong language.
yeah. That and so, so he basically, this author, basically is saying that obviously, if that's what he really meant, because this was during that 400 year period that
Right.
the New Testament was written.
Written. Mm-hmm.
So if that's really what he meant, then this woman was not a good person that he's talking.
Well, a better phrase would probably be, I mean, just to use one of those, a doer of evil. So it says, let me see if I can find the phrase where it says, you must not receive instruction. You must, let's see, I'm trying to find where it says
Not
it.
allow a woman to teach.
Yeah, but do not or exercise authority over a man, but to remain quiet. So I don't know, where is it saying that she usurps authority?
Well, exercise authority, the word authority is usurp.
Oh, usurp. That's right. Okay. So it would say, I do not allow a woman to prevent make a massacre, maybe a woman of massacre or murder, or
Right.
I'm trying to look at some of the other words you have in there. Take some of those words and replace what Paul is saying. Murder a man or massacre a man or slander a man. Even if you want to just go lighter on the word and use the word slander, he's not talking about somebody that just is standing up and wanting to be a teacher.
Yeah.
She's got some strong opinions and strong attitude.
Right. And so I'm going to pull up one more thing for you here and stop sharing that. And I will share something different here because this is Strong's.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I have to go back because I have to go from screen to screen. So there we go. So I'm going to add this.
I see it's coming.
Okay. So if you're looking at this, then you can see that it means usurp authority over, exercise authority over. It's to act of oneself or to dominate.
To dominate.
Yeah. So we see that, it's even here.
Uh-huh.
If you look at this, so it comes from auto, meaning self.
Self, right?
To unilateral, blah, you know what I'm saying?
Take up arms. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's strong too.
Yeah. And so, so again, we've got a strong word here that is somebody who is taking the authority of the one in charge and taking over that authority, and you literally usurping or strong
arming. Yeah. Strong arming would be a good word.
Strong arming the authority away from someone. Now, I would say that in the majority of women, they do not do that.
Well, and we have no desire to do that.
Yeah. And I certainly wasn't doing that on my phone. And even the time that I've been approached by, there was a man we actually had on here who allowed me to teach on his Friday night Shabbat classes. And a man came up to me after that class and said, you should have never been up there teaching. And I said, I in no way usurped his authority. He actually called me, said, hey, Stephanie, how about coming and teaching a class one Friday night? I said, so to say that I did anything wrong, I did, because he's right there. He's standing over there, and he introduced me and welcomed me. And so
I didn't strong arm my way in here.
Yeah, that was in no way usurping his authority. He has total control over this place and even how long I taught. You know, he gave me the floor. So we have to make sure when we understand this that we don't use it in the wrong context, because saying that somebody's usurping someone else's authority, it does happen. But if you use that in the context where it's not happening, then, that's wrong. It's taking it out of context. So that's just my thing there.
I agree. All right. Well, one of the things, why did Paul write this letter? And we're on page 134 if you guys do have the book. But he's basically, he went into how Ephesus, which is kind of, I think that's where this church is being.
He brings in Ephesus a lot, but of course it must be because he did leave Timothy behind. And this is where Artemis, because we're going to get into the gods that were the goddess that was worshipped there.
Right. And so he's talking, she proposes that Paul is addressing some of the false teachings that are beginning to creep into the church. And she references Timothy. He challenged Timothy, make sure they're teaching sound doctrine. There's other evidences and other letters that Paul is saying, deal with these false teachers.
Yeah, and he even says, don't let the demonic activity come in. The doctrine of demons. That's how he puts it.
Yeah.
So
she suggests that perhaps they're dealing with Gnosticism. So Gnosticism became very popular during this time. So it says, this is on 136. The Gnostics were a religious sect. It had its origins in Platonic Plato philosophy, basically is what it is, in the centuries before Christ. The word Gnostic is from the Greek gnosis, which means knowledge. Gnostics taught that the way to salvation was through hidden or divine knowledge. Gnostics believe the only spiritual world is good and the entire material world is evil. And it's only been created by an inferior God who had to have been ignorant or evil to produce such material creation. They believe that only the highest God was good. And by the way, she wrote that with a little g. And then concerning humans, the Gnostics believe that the physical body and soul are also evil. The only thing redeemable in man is his spark or his spirit. It's called the divine spark. So that's kind of in a nutshell. And she went through, I really liked.
Yeah.
I don't want to skip too far ahead. So if there's anything you like.
135, I have a lot highlied, but I won't say it all. But
okay, well, let's go.
She says, are leading the Ephesians into a religion of their imaginations.
Yeah.
Some of the pagan cults have kind of seeped in, and they kind of just put it all together. It's the same way if you think of Indian, like the people of India. They take, if you try to lead a person from India to the Lord, then they just say, oh, that's fine. Yes, I want to be his son or his daughter. And then what they do is they add it to all the other gods they're serving. So they're just adding another god to the one that they're worshiping. So that's kind of what they were doing. They were just adding it to other things they were doing. And it says that Paul had previously warned the Ephesians about these savage wolves who would come in among you, not sparing the flock. And from among your own selves, men will rise, speaking perverse things and drawing away disciples after them. So she kind of gives this background. And then in 1 Timothy 1 and in Timothy 6, he actually tells them that they initiated what Paul called fruitless discussion and empty chatter, misretold that opposed the Jewish scriptures. So and brought in perverse things. So that's kind of some of the background. And so,
and that's important because pagans are coming into the way, and we want, I mean, that was the goal, like to bring the gospel of Yeshua, to bring the good news, you want to call it the good news and everything, to expand it. But it wasn't people were having a hard time reconciling, like, this is what I have believed and this is now what's going on, and they're trying to relate it to what they understand, and it just it presents problems, it presents challenges. I mean, the church has done that. Like, we celebrate holidays that are not in the Bible, but they were definitely celebrated in societies. And so they just, we'll just bring it all together and we'll just make it ours. We'll just turn it into our religion.
Right.
And so we're guilty of doing the same thing. Yeah.
We are. Yeah, definitely. And there's a lot of good stuff in here, like what you read. And then even like she brought in the whole thing about the Nicolaitans, and that they were part of this church, and they were spreading false doctrine and, all sorts of things and pagan beliefs. And he like the author on 137 quotes 1 Timothy 1:7, 1 Timothy 4:1-5, and 1 Timothy 4:1. Right. And basically they all talk about the false teachers. So we really have to understand that a lot of time Paul, when he is writing, he is addressing the false teaching, the false teachers, and who they're actually going after. So the women, the unmarried women, and the widows were vulnerable to this. And so that's why he talks about it, because most often unmarried woman, if her father was no longer around, she had no one, no covering, no protection. And if if her husband has died, then she has no protection. So it's really important to understand the context. Again.
And Paul may have been saying, don't let them speak, but that's not a blanket doctrine. And she kind of talks a little bit about that. I mean, there are times you shouldn't be speaking. Men or women, we saw that in America this week. People are saying things, and there's sometimes you probably just should be quiet and not share your opinions, because you're stirring the pot or you're causing confusion. And the whole thing, even in the previous chapter in this book, she was talking about, these gifts and what we do are for the edification of the church. And so if they're speaking incorrectly or out of turn or causing challenges, it's not for the edification of the church. And I would agree with that. Then we probably shouldn't be sharing that information.
Right. Yeah. And the hatred's got to stop. So we need to keep our thoughts to ourselves, and if we don't like someone, just scroll on. Just scroll on.
Yeah.
But I think because of the context that we take certain things, because look, I mean, I'm not trying to just like derail what we're saying, but I've heard so many people talk about the things that Charlie Kirk said, and they totally take it out of context. And so we do it to people. We do it to the Bible. We do it to Paul, we have to be careful that we're not taking things out of context. Right.
So, I agree. All right. So what is the context? We discussed the context. I think we've got a really good set. Then she begins to really go into Gnosticism, and really she really starts nitpicking even the pronouns, like, or singular or plural.
Yeah. So 138 is good.
Yeah. 138. She says in 1 Timothy 2:11-12, in verse 9-10, we're talking about women, plural. But then in verse 11, we're talking about a woman, singular. And then in verse 12, we're talking about a woman, singular. And then you go to 15, and we're talking about women, plural. So even within the very few sentences surrounding that area and discussing that topic. You have to pay attention to the pronouns, because is Paul talking about women forever and always?
Yeah.
Or just a very specific one, or just a
Right.
specific few? Yeah.
Yeah, and there's verses. Oh, this is what kills me. I get worked up. But there's verses that the word man has been put in those verses when it was non-gender in the Greek.
Yeah.
It was not man. It was oneself, meaning anyone.
Anybody. Yeah, anyone. Yeah.
Watch yourself.
Yeah.
Watch what take care of yourself, but then they insert the word man where it is literally a non-gender word. It does not say man, it says ones. And so that's really, you need to do the work for yourself.
Yeah.
We were actually talking about it before we were on live, and it's like, you've got all these people who don't really study their Bible, who don't know what the Bible's saying. They don't go to the Greek. They don't go to the Hebrew. They don't do word studies to find out what's being said. Yeah. And yet they are authorities on Scripture, and they will tell you and get in your face and tell you what's being said.
Right.
And it's really wrong, because you're responsible.
Yeah.
You have a computer. We all have Bibles. You can look up anything online.
You can look up anything. Yeah. Well, I was in a conversation last night, and we were talking about a certain word in the Bible. And I go, this word is translated this way 77 times in the Bible. And that's the first definition when you look that word up. And then the second definition is what we use today. And it's not even used as much in the Bible, but that's the one we're going to jump on. And I said, go look it up. Go look it up. Go look that word up and go see where it's used. And I hope they do. I hope they do.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
So it is interesting. And so we can't impress you enough to say, to go and look up the words. Go and look up to make sure our translators are using the correct terminology, because we've said this before. Every translator has their own worldview, and when they read Scripture, they will translate it according to their worldview.
Right, they will,
and we have to be aware of that.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting. Okay. Well, I want to look at the chart on page 139, because I think she did such a good job there.
Yes, that was good.
Yeah.
Now, so I'll introduce it and then you can talk about it.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So what we're going to talk about is that.
So I know you can't see it. I wish we should have made a cover of this. It's hard to see.
But it's a chart. And so what she starts pointing out is that she felt like that Paul was definitely talking about, or let me put it this way, he was talking against the lies they were believing and the false teaching they were sharing, they were spreading. So he is correcting 3 different verses, boom, 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 to say, no, this is what is actually being said. So go with that.
Well, what she does is he's giving, Paul in this section is giving like 3 reasons why women should or should not teach, right? And so reason number 1, the implied content of false teaching is you shouldn't teach because Eve was created before Adam. You shouldn't teach. And
so let me say what it is. So it starts with for it was. Now, why did he say for? So he's introducing something. Yeah, it signals. So it's a small word, but it's important. It signals that he's about to give a reason for that instruction. And so then she gives this bird's eye view. So for Eve was created before Adam. Well, the Gnostic teaching is that Eve was created first and she's the mother of all mankind, right? Then Paul's correction is for it was Adam who was first created and then Eve. And so the Gnostics will say, well, Eve was actually created first and she's the mother of everyone. So And how many times have you heard that verse right there used against a woman? So, and
Yeah.
I've heard it used myself.
Yeah, Adam was first. Okay, that's not why.
So as if there's a hierarchy.
Right. There's not a hierarchy. All right. Number 2, the implied false teaching is Adam was deceived and not the woman, because we're referring back to this passage in 1 Timothy. So, and it says Adam was deceived, or Adam wasn't deceived. The woman was the wrongdoer. That's what it says. So the Gnostic teaching that goes along with that thinking is that Eve is actually the hero in creation because she imparted knowledge, the tree of good and evil, the tree of knowledge and wisdom, to Adam. And so Paul's correction says, and it was not Adam who was deceived, but the woman who was deceived and who became the wrongdoer. So he's saying, no, Eve is not the hero. She actually is the one in the wrong because she was deceived.
Yeah. And go back and read those passages in Genesis, because if you really look at it, Eve was not around when God gave Adam these instructions. So if anyone was actually in charge of telling Eve and correcting Eve, he failed his job because he
did. That's right. That's right. Okay, and the third one is, by the way, Nettie says that black dress looks great on you.
Oh. Thank you, Nettie.
Number 3, women cannot obtain salvation while bearing children. That's an implied false teaching. Women cannot obtain salvation while bearing children. This is what the Gnostics believe, that to bear children was to disseminate the spark of deity within you. Entrapping that spark in a soul is evil. Okay? And then Paul makes the correction. But women will be preserved through childbirth, and then they will continue in faith and love and sanctity and moderation. So again, he's not specifically challenging whether or not women can speak. He's, women should not strong arm their way into the assembly, but he's also addressing, there's some implied by saying these things, there's some implications that definitely dabble in the Gnostic beliefs,
right?
And he's trying to correct it. He's trying
to.
And
this last one, number 3, is what she spends some time on.
She does.
But first, she goes into some of this for 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah. Do you want to look at any of those? Did you have any?
Yeah. So I think this is something I underlined. One of the natural consequences of the fall was a corruption of the first couple's relationship, that the woman would desire her husband, but he would rule over her. This was not a curse or an imposed punishment, but a description of life in a sinful world. The tyranny of men over women was not God's design. God's design was a perfect harmony between them. Sin is a great destroyer. It corrupted man's pure love into a desire to dominate.
Right.
I thought that was excellent.
And she's kind of inferred that. She has said things like that earlier in the book, that the result of the fall wasn't a once and for all proclamation for the rest of time. It's a consequence of sin. It's a result of sin. It's not.
Sorry.
No, it's not. It shouldn't be. God didn't want to change anything, but it's happened because of a result of sin.
Exactly. Very good point. But I think that when you really look at Genesis, and before they sinned, they were to be equals. There was no hierarchy in being one. There's no hierarchy if you're one. So you got to put things in perspective. So go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, reason number 1, it was Adam who first created and then Eve. Many interpret this to mean that Adam's position as firstborn, in quotes, gave account of him as an exalted status over Eve, but that assumption's not supported throughout the context of the rest of Genesis.
Right.
It's a natural consequence. And then, so rather than assuming Paul is teaching a creation order hierarchy, which is so often interpreted that way, that there's maybe a likely another possibility to consider. with this first statement, Paul could well be refuting the fraudulent teachings about Eve, and the Gnostic account of the creation story glorified Eve and the serpent. So the Gnosticism twisted the account of Eve and the serpent, and they believe that Eve was the firstborn human, actually gave life to Adam.
Right.
And she actually has a quote from the Gnostics' writing saying,
yeah, I thought that was good. I actually highlighted that.
Yeah, it's basically Eve is told, wake him up, go give him life, and so that's not what that's not what happened.
Yeah, and she, I keep saying that, but she actually quotes later on 145. We'll have to, because this is the gospel according to the Egyptians, and there was some interesting false teaching in that, and so, but we'll bring that up late when we get to it. But it's the same kind of thing, that, you know, these were books that were written in those times, and this was the understanding that was being taught to some people.
That's right. She made one little point over. It says, in giving truth to contradict what was taught about Eve, Paul is building a case of how contrary that false teaching are to the true word of God. So he's definitely arguing with it.
Yeah, and the one point I have here on 141, Eve was, I don't know if you read it and I missed it, but Eve was eventually equated with Artemis. Did you read that?
Oh, I did. I skipped over that. You want to read that section?
Yeah, Eve was eventually equated to Artemis, who was, you know, pagan goddess.
Right.
In Gnostic literature. Right. And she was more or less the mother of all life, including Adam. So this is actually something that was well known and was taught at that time. So this is the kind of stuff they're trying to keep out. Paul's like, we need to reject that. Timothy, you need to keep it out of the church.
Right.
So
Artemis, I mean, this is just a little twist. I know we've mentioned this before. Artemis was called Queen of the Universe. And so when the Roman Church started, you know, putting their doctrine in place and everything, they took that title and gave it to Mary and called her Queen of the Universe. So if you want to talk about Gnosticism creeping into the church,
right?
Again, we talked about how things kind of, we blended some of the pagan practices with some of the church practices and kind of created something that makes everybody happy. And that's a really good example of how a blend that happened.
Yeah. And we should move on because I know I've been talking too much.
Yeah.
So for the next one, number 2, and it was not Adam who was deceived, but the woman was deceived and became the wrongdoer. One of the things that I had here was some try to explain Paul's statement, and this I have heard
the same things highlighted.
Yep, I've heard this said from the pulpit. It's a statement by Paul suggesting that Paul means that women by nature are easily deceived, so they shouldn't be trusted to teach. Right. And I have heard that in my life, and it's a shame. But again, she repeats what God addressed to Adam and Eve was a description, not a prescription.
Yeah.
A description with a D, not a prescription.
Right.
Of how life would change now that they had introduced sin. And I would star by that because
I do too. My star is there's no indication in Genesis of a greater gullibility on the part of Eve. She may have held the conversation with the serpent, but both Adam and Eve ate the fruit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have as much for the third point. Did you have anything else there?
I think I said to think that God would forgive Paul, but continue to make all women accountable for Eve's sin seems very unlikely. It's an attack on the right. So Paul can teach and other men can teach, even though Adam ate the fruit too. Yeah. But women can't, you know, so yeah.
Yeah. So
had an exclamation point next to that one.
Oh, I know. And yeah, so women can never be forgiven because of what Eve did.
Yeah. But men can.
But men can, yes.
Didn't Adam fall too?
Yeah. So reason 3, but women will be preserved through childbirth. if they continue in faith, love, and sanctity with moderation. So this part is very interesting because this is what, you already said ahead of time, but this was their assignment. The whole class had the same assignment.
Yeah.
So she, the author, because I keep wanting to say Paul, but the Gnostics taught that the requirements for salvation, including releasing the spirit or the divine spark from the evil soul so it could return to be united with the highest deity. Childbearing made that task almost impossible because the divine spark was scattered into one's offspring.
Right.
So you shared it now with your offspring. So if you were pregnant, then you couldn't release that. You couldn't release that that spirit of that divine spark from evil and be saved. So it says that because, like I said, there was historical record of a pagan priest who renounced all fleshly procreation.
Yeah.
And then she just goes on, even like the Nicolaitan traditions rejected marriage and were violently opposed to childbirth. And that goes against, God said,
be fruitful and multiply.
Be fruitful and multiply. Right. So they were basically stopping that and saying, well, you can't be saved if you're pregnant. Right. And so he's saying, no, they're preserved through what? Childbirth. Yeah. Childbirth. So it doesn't affect their salvation. It doesn't, do that. And so I thought that was good.
I did too. All right. So then I think we've got another little on page 146. Was Paul stating a universal prohibition on teaching to all women in every age and place? And that fundamentally, really, that is the question. I think Paul was saying, hold your peace. I mean, we talked about that last week. There's a time and a place to hold your peace. But is it forever, universally forever, in every age? And so that's the great debate with these verses.
Yeah. And we already talked about the whole usurping authority, which was the next part here, but I think we probably covered that pretty well. Unless you think we need to add
something. No, I don't think there's anything else. This is where she gets into that usurping authority. She also says the earliest usage were found in extra biblical writing, and it meant to be responsible for something, usually murder. And that's what Stephanie was saying, is she was giving a little more detail about it. By the 2nd century, it conveyed a sense of having power or authority, and it implied dominance. So again, strong arming, where we're talking about that word and how it's used. So,
and that last paragraph on 147, in the body of Christ, no one is to dominate.
Right.
Paul told the Ephesians to all be subject to one another in the fear of Christ. He wrote the Corinthians that no one person was to be considered above the rest. All members were of the same body, all significant, and all in service under one head, Jesus. And so it is like, we kind of like almost take, like, how can he say this on one hand and then say, oh, but these people are not equal. This whole group, they're not equal.
Right.
He's not saying that. So, and then I wrote a star by this. One last note. This is 148. Paul lays out church leadership credentials for elders and deacons. And we're talking 1 Timothy 3, 1 through 13. And I happen to have this.
You have that open?
Let me double check it, but
some assume these are for males only, which would lend support to restricting women from teaching, also in leadership. But while the typical translation begins with, if any man aspires to the office of an overseer, it's fine work he desires to do. The Greek pronouns throughout that verse were actually not male, but gender neutral. So do you have that pulled up? Did you?
I have, here's the first one. So let me share it. I just have to share the screen. And then you can make it larger if we know. I have to add it to stage. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay, so I can scroll down while I'm doing this. So here it starts. This is 1 Timothy 3:1. So, and whenever it's in brackets, you have to remember that is not in the original Greek.
Right.
So
right.
This says a trustworthy saying. If anyone aspires to be an overseer, and look what it says, he desires a noble task. So first thing off, we have he. So let's look at this.
Let's look at he.
Now also, before I do that, let me show you this. So let me show you, because we can also go up here because I have Strong's. Now I can pull up the lexicon. So tell me if it pulls up okay.
Okay.
So can you see the lexicon?
Yeah, it's hard to see, but yes.
Okay. So here it is. A trustworthy statement if any man. But look at this right here. So this is the Strong's number. Any man is what the verse says.
Yeah.
But here
a certain one or someone.
Everyone, some or any person or object.
Isn't that interesting?
This is very non-gender.
Yeah.
And we all know what that means because and look at this. So here you have the other verses. Can you see on the side where my cursor is?
Yep, I see Matthew.
The words in red are this word. Something ought.
So those are other ways that it's translated. Right.
Yeah.
Those are other ways.
Anyone, some, certain. Now the King James puts man in there, but again, you have to remember King James was
King James, right? You gotta know who we're talking about. Yeah.
Some, certain, some, anyone.
Yeah.
Anyone. One. I mean, how obvious is that?
Yeah.
No one else uses it as man except, and even here when they do put man, it's in any man. So these are verses. These are all just in Matthew. We could keep going to Mark. There's 526 instructions.
Yeah.
So this is used this way as a certain, as a some. Now, why suddenly use it as any man?
Yeah.
Why?
So it should say, if anyone wants to be in leadership,
if anyone aspires to be an overseer, it is a fine work. So here, he desires.
Yep. Let's look at that one.
Yeah. So again, I'm gonna. Yeah. So here it is. Covet, desire, long, covet, desire. There's no gender associated with that.
Right.
No gender associated with this word. So again, and I can show you verse after verse. I know we don't have much time, but you see it in here. This does say man here. This says wife or woman here. So that is true.
Those are definite gender words.
Those are gender words. And I know there were more verses here. His own, look at this, one's own. It is he must be was added. One who manages one's own household well.
Right.
Keeping children.
Yeah, of either sex.
Yeah. And it's not his children.
Yeah.
It's children under control with all dignity.
Yeah.
So again, very non-gender. We put it in his own right here in the next one. But if a man, again, same word, a certain one, someone, anyone, it's the same one that I just showed you over there before.
A certain one.
It's a certain one. So if one does not know how to manage one's own household. How will there's no man associated with this number.
Yeah.
This word. How will he take care? No, it's how to take care. It's not gender oriented.
Yeah.
Of an assembly or a congregation. So we see it over and over, and it's important, guys. And then, again, that he will not become conceited. It's so that no one will be conceited.
So Stephanie, you're showing us Bible Hub, correct?
Yes.
And is there a certain version you're looking at, or you just go to Strong's?
I go to Strong's and the lexicon. So
Okay.
can you see those two
Yep,
things?
I sure can. I sure can.
So this is Bible Hub. You can put in your verses up here.
Yep.
It has all the verses. Then you can choose Strong's and lexicon. So, and it will do one verse at a time. So,
yeah.
So this is important
It is.
to know that this is what's being said. This is what's being written. Right. And we need to remember and to look these things up.
Yeah, we do. We need to be diligent in, if you're going to take a stand on a soapbox, you better be right. Mm-hmm. You have to look right. She made a note about, it talks about women being deceived and gullible, but you could even say this in leadership, women leadership qualities. She said, people who assume that women are gullible neglect examples in the scripture. And you can even say, who think women should not be leaders. You neglect the examples in the scripture of women that led with wisdom and skill. Abigail, which I love her story, was was a wise and prudent woman. Her husband's name was Foolish. His name was Foolish. Mm-hmm. Queen Esther, whom God brought the kingdom for such a time as this. There were resourceful midwives. Right. In the story of Moses, who found a way to keep Hebrew babies alive. Jael, outwitted. She's the one with the tent peg. Other people found the Syrophoenician woman who interacted with Jesus. Mary being the first woman to describe his resurrection. The woman of Samaria is the first person he revealed himself as Messiah to. Mm-hmm. So Priscilla, Jonah, who is identified as an apostle, I believe. I mean, the Bible has so many examples, and you can't just pick. You can't cherry pick it.
Yep, you can't. Yeah. And we are out of time.
We are. All right. So thank you for joining us. Shabbat Shalom. And
Shabbat Shalom.
See you guys next time. If you missed today's show and want to watch it again, or want to tell someone where they can watch this episode, go to lambnetwork.tv, where you will find this show and all of the other live Lamb show archives on the on-demand section of the website. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to tell someone about the Messianic Lamb Network.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussions, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the lambnetwork.tv website. I'm Stephanie Pavlantos, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.